Yo, hi guys, it's Teardown here with my broken Samsung Galaxy S4. So in this video I'm going to show you how you can replace the entire screen of this device, as well as the silver banding bezel which goes right the way around this handset, because as you can see where I've dropped it, it's taken a chunk out of the bezel which goes around the sides and then fractured the glass from there. Now the phone itself and all the functions that it has does work absolutely fine with no issues at all. It's simply the fact that the glass is fractured on the screen. The AMOLED panel underneath is perfectly fine as well. It doesn't seem like that's affected, but from what I've seen from other installations, because the panel is only 0.4mm thick, you can accidentally break it while removing the screen. So we're going to be removing the entire screen itself, not just the glass digitizer. So in order to go through this process, you're going to need some tools and some replacement components. I've got some Phillips head and some flat head screwdrivers here, and some slightly smaller ones here. I've also got some proprietary opening tools, and as you can see, these are just sharp angled edges here, just so you can get in amongst the nooks and crannies and pry open the edges of the phone. Just in case the proprietary opening tools don't do the trick, we got a couple of guitar picks here just in case. And obviously you're going to need the replacement components as well. So here we have the replacement screen, still with the plastic covering coating still on it, and along the back you can see some of the components unveiled there. Now this is for the GT-i9500 model, which I have. This cost me £140 here in the UK from eBay. I'll try and leave the links in the description for those as well. And finally we have the banding bezel which goes right the way around the handset. I think off the top of my head this was about £13–14 here in the UK. Again, I'll try and leave the links in the description down below. So let's get on with the screen replacement, and as you can see we removed the battery, the SIM card and the micro SD card as well. I just want to point out that I don't take any responsibility for anything that may go wrong during this process. This video is purely for informational purposes only, but if you do decide to go through this process, it does void the warranty. And with that out of the way, you need to grab a Phillips head screwdriver and remove 9 screws, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Next up, we're going to remove the external speaker assembly here with the screws out of the way. It should be a little bit easier to get the proprietary opening tool and try and levy it out this way, or you could use a flathead screwdriver and use some of the pins this side and try and levy it out. I'm going to try and use the flathead screwdriver from this side and just see if I can pry it open. And it does look like it does just lift out like so. Just be a little bit careful you don't damage any of the contacts underneath. But there you go, that's the external speaker assembly we'll leave to one side. Next up, we're going to be removing the entire rear chassis of this handset, and what we're going to be using is a proprietary opening tool and inserting it just underneath where the micro USB slot is, like so, and then working our way around the entire handset. Obviously if the proprietary tool doesn't get you in there, you may want to use the guitar pick that we mentioned earlier, or a plastic knife. Excellent, it's unclipped all the way around. This side where it actually cracked the side, I had to use a little bit of force there because the chunk that was taken out the bezel was kind of infusing it a little bit. So let's see if we can just prise this away. There we go. That's how easily you take away the rear panel. Next we need to remove the micro USB assembly here with this cover in the way, so we need to remove that. So we'll grab a flathead screwdriver and try and prise it open this side. You may need to twist it as you've got it in there, because the other side has got a ridge in it. And while we're here, we're also going to pry open the antenna cable here as well, so be careful not to bend it, just try and prise it open so it's no longer on the contacts like so. We're now going to remove the cable for the touch buttons, which is just along here. So we're not going to totally remove it, just unplug it from the circuitry. So here we go, like so. It doesn't need too much pressure at all. That's out of the way. Now what we're going to do is follow that cable down, because it sits on top of another cable just here. See if we can just loosen that a little bit as well, because there may be a little bit of tape holding that down. And then once we get to this big panel here, we're going to do the same thing, just try and prise it open like so, so it's loose, and then follow it down Let's see if we can just leave that a little bit loose. As I say, there may be a little bit of cable there, so you may have to jimmy it about a little bit. Now we're going to work the way around to here and see if we can actually pry that open as well. As I say, just sticky tape underneath, so just slowly prise it open. And it should come away. There we go. There's a lot of tape just underneath there, and if we remove that, that's a micro USB assembly there with the touch buttons underneath. So we'll leave that to one side. Next up, what we're going to be doing is taking out this black little screw right there. So grab a Phillips head screwdriver and just take that out. Just unplug the antenna this side here. Just leave it to one side, and also unplug these components towards the top of the motherboard here. They just slightly slip away, as you can see. Just there. Do the same here, and the final one along this side here, like so. And what we'll try and do is pry open by just using the SIM card hole there, the motherboard. What we'll do is just try and pry away the camera as well, like so. Still attached to the motherboard, as you can see there. And there we have the S4 motherboard. We'll just leave that to one side. Next, we're going to be removing the 3.5mm audio jack, so you need to grab a Phillips head screwdriver and remove this screw right here. Just going to grab my flathead screwdriver and see if we can just pry this off, like so. And it has got a little bit of sticky tape on the other side, as you can see there, so leave that to one side, grouping it with the screw that we've just taken off. Next, we have the earpiece and the sensors along the top that we're going to be removing here. There is a clip holding them in, so don't be afraid to just hold them by the cables there and just pull it a little bit there. As you can see, the clip just comes off. And what we'll do is grab a flathead screwdriver and pry away the earpiece this side as well. It does have a little bit of stickiness next to it, so as you can see there, so don't be afraid to just use that flathead screwdriver. And there we go, we've got the earpiece and the sensors next to it off in a jiffy with the bracket that was holding it in. As I say, don't be afraid, there's a little bit of stickiness, double-sided tape either side, so don't be afraid to just pull it a little bit. Next up, what we're going to be taking off is going to be the vibrating motor here. So again, I'm going to grab a flathead screwdriver and try and prise open this section here, because there's a little slot, plastic slot there holding it in. So again, there should be a little bit of stickiness to it. There we go. Once you get underneath it, it's quite easy to just pry off the sticky tape underneath. There we go. As I say, it's got a lot of sticky tape the other side. I mean, look how much it's got there. So you may have to be a little bit firm with it, but just be a little bit careful. So leave that to one side as well. And there we have it, a £500 smartphone in pieces. So we've got everything that we need to get off the old smash screen, as you can see here. So we'll just leave that to one side. Bring in the replacement screen, as you can see. Still got the sealant on the front there. And what I'm going to do first of all is replace or insert back the vibrating motor that we've just took out from the old one. So get the flathead screwdriver, just make sure that notch is where it's meant to be. Just press that down firmly, and the contact, make sure that's in there as well, especially where the circular notch of the plastic is popping out on the side here. So that's pretty good. From here onwards, this is just a reverse of what we've just done. And just to let you know, I've had to peel off this sticky tape that was on this little mesh part from the old front screen and bring her over to the new one. So do make sure you pay attention to see if there's any meshes or sticky tape that isn't on your new product, and just bring that over. So I'm going to bring into play here the earpiece and the sensors next to it, so they should just slot right in there. That's the first one. And if I just bring in the earpiece there with the adjacent sensors, those will just stick down and slot right in there. With those sensors placed back where they were, remember the little bracket that was on there as well, which popped off, we'll just put that back in as well. Just be a little bit careful because it can be a little bit fiddly. So once you've got it in place, it should just click in, and if I can just get it in, there we go, it clicks in like so, just holding the sensors in so that they don't just rattle around. So with those sensors and earpiece in, what did we have next to it? We had the 3.5mm audio jack, like you can see here. So we'll just bring that back in there, slot it right in, and just press it down, and then just bring in the tiny little screw that it used. It is different from the rest of the screws, so just make sure you don't lose it, and get that placed where it was. Next up, we need to bring the motherboard back in, but before we do so, we need to peel off this plastic covering that we have here. And incidentally, if you don't have the plastic thermal covering on your new product, do bring that across from your old one, otherwise your phone will simply overheat. So bring back the motherboard, as you can see here, and we'll just get that placed in its rightful position, just making sure the contacts are bent up so we don't catch those as we navigate the motherboard back in. And there we go. Just slot in pretty easily, to be fair, and just firmly press the camera back down a little bit, just to make sure it's not hovering around or rattling around. Remember that little black screw that we had taken out? Remember to put that back in, because that holds the motherboard in place. So just get that back in where it was, like so. Excellent. And what we're now going to do is connect the screen. Excellent. It should click back in place, which it does there. So just bend back the cabling for 3.5mm audio jack. Again, it should just click in place like it does there. And the earpiece and the proximity sensor next to it. And then finally the front-facing camera here. Now what we need to do is bring in the micro USB circuitry here, so just make sure that's underneath. Before I do that, just peel off this protective covering here, and just make sure you slide in the micro USB components underneath this flex cable here, which is for the buttons on the front, so the menu and back buttons, and the home button obviously on the front bottom panel. And then before we place all of it down, just make sure we click in this section onto the motherboard, and then we can lay down the cabling underneath. Just make sure that's all pressed down. Make sure you get a flathead screwdriver and make sure it's pressed down firmly around these white plastic notches that you have here and here, just to make sure it's held in place and doesn't kind of move around. Shouldn't need to press too hard, just to make sure it's down. Just make sure that's in down there. Yeah, that seems okay. Now what we need to do is connect up the buttons that we have on the front of the unit towards the bottom here using this flex cable. So just make sure that's clicked in, and it should click in like so. Once that's all down as it is there, what we now can do is bring in the protective covering for the micro USB port there. And remember, the one side goes in first, so I'm going to put in the right hand side first, and then grab a flathead screwdriver and just click that down like so, and then it's back to the way it was. The final thing that we need to connect up is the antenna, so I'll get that lined up and just press it down, it should just click in. Place down the rest of the antenna along the various notches in the plastic. Just going to use a flathead screwdriver just to guide in the cable into the notches, because it can be a little bit fiddly, and then align it up, and then all we should need to do is press it down. Don't force it, because you may damage it and you may not have any reception. And finally we'll bring in a replacement bezel, so we'll just line that up and with the screw holes rather, and then it should just clip down around the edges of the handset. So as you can hear it is clipping down. And just make sure that's good by pressing it all the way down around the handset. And as you can see, I must have missed one before, and another one, and it's all good around the top as well. So we'll just lie that flat back again. Before we put the screws back in, remember the external speaker assembly here. We'll just align that up, and it does clip in once you've got the one side in. Should just go straight in like so, perfectly as it was before. So we'll just put the 9 screws back in now. With the screws now back in, I'll just insert the SIM card back where it was. Just use, and there we go. The micro SD card, we'll slot that back in. The battery as well, and finally the back. The moment of truth, we'll just switch on the handset, pressing down the power. It vibrated, so obviously the vibrating motor still works. And let's see if we take this off while it boots up. Ooh, always good, always good. So screen looks immaculate, it's brand new, and side bezel, which previously had an indentation into it as it hit the concrete. And if I can just bring it back actually, just to show you, where is it? Here we go. You can see there's the old one where it took a chunk out of it. New one can't even tell. And while this swipes in, look how good that looks. If I put the screen to sleep, old one, smashed one, and brand new replacement screen on the Galaxy S4. So just want to see if, turn off the Wi-Fi, it has got signal there, and let's just make sure that all the buttons work. So menu button works, back button works, try that again. Does the home button work? Yay. Let's just swipe back into it, volume up and down buttons. Yeah, that's how easily you can replace your Samsung Galaxy S4 screen and the side banding bezel as well, as easy as that. Any comments or questions you guys have got, hit them up in the comment section down below there. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video and you like what you saw. If you haven't already done so, hit subscribe. It's also down there as well. Doesn't cost you a penny, and you can also check out some of our forthcoming videos. Thanks for watching, have a wicked day, and we'll see you next time.